So, it's about noon here in Vancouver. It's cloudy with a little bit of an overcast, and I think there's some sun peeking in here and there. As a result, there are some leaf blowers going on outside. I do live in a pretty populated part of the city. Therefore, if you do hear the rumblings and the gurrs and the roars of the people outside trying to maintain the status of our exterior, then hey, I apologize for that. I can't do anything about that. But today's video is going over the Vancouver Canucks, and we're talking about JT Miller once again. Because when it comes to Donnie and Dhali, the show on Czech TV that you can catch, featuring Rick Dhaliwal and Don Taylor, they had themselves on JT Miller's agent, Brian Bartlett. And Bartlett shared a few comments about the entire JT Miller process, of him re-signing a contract, of him playing out his future in Vancouver, this, that, and the other. So I think it would make a very good video topic to go over these comments and also highlight what exactly it was Miller said in the postseason exit interview as well. Because they're all kind of related, right? So let's go over Vancouver Canucks forward JT Miller, maybe for the last time, who really knows, and discuss what he did this season, the impact he had on the ice, and whether or not he really is all that, and more, which would justify a potential $9 million contract extension, like we have seen some NHL insiders, Frank Seravalli, for example, say that he could get. So, JT Miller, 29 years old, 6'1", 218, as a left-handed forward. He can play center, he can play the wing, he can play all forward positions. He's a pretty versatile guy in that respect. He's making $5.25 million this season. He's making $5.25 million next season. And the contract extension is going to be a pretty interesting part of his entire profile because last season he scored 99 points in 80 games played. Now, he has taken an absolute huge step in terms of his overall production from New York to Tampa Bay to Vancouver. He has been a phenomenal player for Vancouver when it comes to the point production. And I think when you highlight just that, it's easy to go out there and say, okay, this is a guy who's going to be making $5 million while scoring at a 100-point pace over a season. Of course, when he gets his contract extension in 2023, 2024, he's going to be getting a lot of money. And that's exactly what NHL insiders are saying. Elliot Friedman said that it could be a Mika Zibanejad sort of type deal, so maybe 8.5-ish by 8 years. Frank Seravalli said it could start with a 9, the number that Miller gets on his next contract. But the question is whether or not the Vancouver Canucks will be the team to sign him to that contract, or if some other team will take on that task. This is because the Vancouver Canucks don't really have anything to gain by signing Miller to a long-term 8-year deal. One of the biggest things about Miller and his personality that's been kind of highlighted by people in the media is that this guy doesn't really like moving. It would be more preferable for him to stick around because his family, his little girls and his wife, are more accustomed to living life in one place rather than moving around like they would be in the case of Miller getting traded this year. But the Vancouver Canucks are not a contender right now. Are they really a team that would be using JT Miller to the best of their ability should they go out there and keep him? The idea of trading away Miller is not because it will make the team better per se, but because the long-term assets you could get from a Miller trade could be seen as more beneficial than Miller himself. Miller's a good player, he scored at a 100-point pace, but he's not going to be scoring at a 100-point pace for the rest of an 8-year deal. Who knows how long he's able to produce if he scores at a $9 million by 7-year deal, or a 6-year deal, or a 5-year deal. The shorter you get, the more guaranteed it is that Miller's going to be able to produce in a high capacity like he has been this season, but the Canucks are still pushed up to the cap, they still have to free up some money, and JT Miller, if you traded this guy away, could get you so gosh darn much. Miller even said during his exit interview that his best friends are in Vancouver. He said that he wants to stick around and he wants to build this team forward to being more competitive and more successful, yada yada yada. He's got all the good qualities when it comes to wanting to win. And the agent went out there and said a pretty similar thing on Donnie and Dhali earlier today. It is one of his goals to re-sign in Vancouver, the agent said. He wants to help Vancouver going forward. He would be happy to extend this summer if we can make it happen. We will have some conversations this summer and see where it goes. Another tweet says, we value security. The mythology is players don't do well after 25 or 30 years old. That's not the case. Steven Stamkos just hit a career high at 32. Players take care of themselves. We will see if a new deal comes together or not, and I anticipate we will have conversations this summer. Now, I'm going to go out there and say it. Steven Stamkos is a really, really good player, and he's one of these guys that is a franchise-defining talent, so using him as the example is more of an exception, not the rule kind of thing. It's like Bo Horvat improving his skating, you know? You can't just expect every prospect who's not great at skating to improve in the way that Bo did. Bo is just the exception to the rule. Stamkos, I think, is a similar thing here. Because when it comes to other NHL players, there are so many that have really good seasons in 27, 28, 29 years old, and then 30, 31, 32, you see a decline. There is no telling that JT Miller will be one or the other. And it's that insecurity that kind of gets a lot of Canucks fans wary when they think about, okay, signing him to a $9 million deal? Like, 8 years, $9 million, even 7 years? Like, the contract that he'll get after this one will start in 2023, 2024. He'll be 30 years old when that first year is being played. So 30 to 35, 36, 37 years old for JT Miller, I mean, sure, he'll be good next season. He'll be good the year after that. He might even score, let's say, 70 or 80 points. I honestly kind of doubt he gets back up to 100 next season, because when I think about players in the NHL and I talk about the guys that are in that 100-point mark, let's say for the sake of argument 95-plus points. 95-plus points in the NHL, there were 12 players who did that. Panarin, Josi, Marner, Miller, Tkachuk, Stamkos, Matthews, Kaprizov, Draisaitl, Huberdeau, Gaudreau, and McDavid. If I try to say that JT Miller is in the same breath as a lot of these guys, I cannot get myself to finish that sentence, funny enough. Like, Connor McDavid and Miller. Would you rather have McDavid or Miller? I'd rather have McDavid. Gaudreau Miller? I'd rather have Gaudreau. Huberdeau Miller? I'd rather have Huberdeau. Draisaitl Miller? I'd rather have Draisaitl. Kaprizov Miller? Same thing, Kaprizov. Matthews Miller? I'd rather have Matthews. Stamkos Miller? I'd rather have Stamkos. Tkachuk Miller is the interesting one because I think they're a little bit closer than you could say with the other ones, but even the ones after that, would you rather have Mitch Marner or JT Miller on your team if you're starting from scratch? I'd rather have Marner. Would you rather have Josi or Miller on your team if you're starting from scratch? I'd rather have Josi. Would you rather have Panarin or Miller if you're starting from scratch? I'd rather have Panarin. Even though JT Miller is producing like all these guys have been, he scored at a 100-point pace, he had 99 points, he'll likely get 70 or 80 points next season too if he plays the full year. I don't think he's a $9 million caliber player. Oh, but how did he get 99 points then? Well, because he was one of the only guys that was actually producing when the team was playing under Travis Green. You would see under Travis Green, the team would lose like 5-1, 6-2. You'd have these 4-2 losses everywhere. And Miller just happened to have points or assists on all of the goals that was scored because, look, there was only one effective unit on the Canucks power play. Miller was playing on a team that didn't have Pettersson or Besser scoring as much as they could have, so he kind of had to carry the load himself. He's a good player, and he's definitely capable of scoring a lot of points. It's just the negatives that come with his game, too. All of the really aggressive and ambitious dangles he tries to do in overtime, the lack of back-checking on certain moments, plus the attitude that you see when things don't go his way. All these combined tell me that he's not a player that I would spend $9 million a year on for 6 years or 7 years, even though he scored 100 points in a season. But the thing is, I know other NHL teams don't see it like that. I know they don't see, the negative aspects of him back-checking or his lack of back-checking when he loses the puck in the offensive zone. Teams don't see when Miller rages out a little bit. He yells and he screams and it's picked up by the microphones on the boards and then it affects the way he plays the next few shifts. Other teams don't see that. Teams see the play, they see the points, they see, oh my gosh, he's making $5 million next year and he had 99 points this year. That's a steal of a player. Let's go out there and send away prospect after pick after young guy, all this stuff to Vancouver because we want that guy. I think there's a little bit more value to be had here when you acknowledge what he could get on the market, rather than signing him long-term, because even though he is a good player, and if you take him away from Vancouver, the team gets worse, for what the Canucks are building, Patrick Allvin, Jim Rutherford trying to get younger, trying to get faster, trying to get smarter, trying to get more competitive, trying to get better, I think there's a lot more to gain when you trade Miller away than keep him. So, that's still my opinion on here. We had ourselves the agent who talked about it as well, so you can let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about that. Have I made the argument properly? Have I convinced you that Miller is a better chip to be traded rather than to be re-signed for $9 million or $8.5 million a season or whatever, because that's what his apparent market value is? Now, I'll say this right here. If JT Miller decides, okay, screw it, 3 years, $7 million. I'd take that in a heartbeat, because do I think that Miller could be a competitive player for 3 years, and do I think he'll be in the $7 million range for that amount of time? Yes, I do think so. It's just when insiders like Friedman and Sarah Vela are saying, okay, 8.5, $9 million, 8 years long, that's when I start to get wary. So, let me know in the comments all your thoughts about JT Miller and this entire conversation over here. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.